Ladies and gentlemen, what an episode of the originals. This is DA Media back here with the review of the originals Season 5, Episode 12, A Tale of Two Wolves, which those of you who have seen everything on the internet, this is the backdoor pilot for Legacies, this spinoff coming in the fall of the originals. It is obviously focused on Hope and the kids of the Salvatore School for the Young and Gifted, which is essentially going to be your template in your place for the spinoff in the fall. This was basically showing a glimpse of what the stakes would be coming in that show. We've seen a little bit of the high school, the regular Mystic Falls High School that we all remember from the Vampire Diaries, the early days of it at least. You've seen the Salvatore School itself a little bit, not really, just very few glimpses. You've seen Hope herself interact with Elijah more this week. She really hasn't interacted with any of the original family, which a lot of people are mad about. I'm sure that will change in the series finale next week. I'm sure she'll get her goodbyes, because I doubt we're seeing many, if not any, of the original family in the spinoff. It was really more focused on Klaus, Caroline, Elijah, Hope, and a little bit of a lark in there. We met Lizzie and Josie as teens, which I guess is appropriate since they're going to be leading the spinoff with Hope. We met Landon, the new love interest for Hope, I guess. So anyone that had their hopes up for Roman and Hope, that ship is definitely sailed. You're also seeing tons and tons of callbacks, great callbacks to the Vampire Diaries. My favorite one in particular was the beginning where we seen the what do they call it? The archives of Stefan Salvatore. It was that was so good. You seen a picture of Catherine that we seen in the pilot of the Vampire Diaries, and that was so good. You didn't really see no mention of Damon in there, which was weird, but I guess, the original family never liked Damon, so that doesn't surprise me. We seen it was quick, but if you were paying attention, there was a glass window that said Dr. Elena Salvatore, which I'm guessing is her own little home clinic for Elena. So this is definitely past the time Elena and Damon got married in the Vampire Diaries, which I assume we're many years ahead of now. You also seen Caroline back in the originals, who's been gone for, I think, since the episode Haley died, which feels like a long time ago, even though it's only been a mere month or so. You've seen her interact with Klaus in, I think, the most favorable way since the last time they met in the Vampire Diaries, I think, or no, not the last time, but the season finale of season 4, when Klaus finally did sort of the right thing regarding Caroline. And this was their best interaction of the season, for me. Definitely the best interaction I think they've had, period. It was very, it felt very mature. It felt very selfless. Caroline didn't head first run into putting her girls in danger. And Klaus didn't really ask her to. They did some kind of, they didn't directly siphon the magic off of transforming Hope, which I thought was going to be what they were going to do. And I was pretty much against that. And then Klaus just, he really turned the tables right now on any Klaus doubters out there who thought, this series can never fully change his character, obviously not fully redeem him. He's been a monster for 1,000 years, but he was top tier. What I think this series meant to put in him from the start, and it showed so much in this episode. Joseph Morgan is incredible. He's I don't even know, he carries the entire load on his shoulders, and you can tell almost every episode. I mean, he was only in, you think there was a lot of Klaus this episode, but there wasn't really. It was more Hope and more Hope, more Elijah, because Elijah was with Hope. More Hope, and her exploring the landscape that's going to be Legacies. They tried to give us a very big glimpse of what's coming in the fall, and I, for one, enjoyed it. It looked good. I'm the biggest drawing factor for me going into that new spinoff is it's pretty much going to be a turf war between the regular Mystic Falls kids and the supernatural kids at the Salvatore school, and together, I don't think they specifically stated this at Comic-Con, but together they're pretty much going to be fighting off all the supernatural threats, because if anyone didn't watch any interviews, Matt Davis just keeps talking and talking about how they're going to have these new villains that come to town to interfere with the kids. I think that's my biggest drawing factor, which is going to be the plot. I'm not that interested in the romantic relationships or anything regarding the kids, high school lives in general. I think we did that on TVD for the first season, and then it really delved really heavily into the plot. I think that's what this show is really going to do too. I don't know if it'll burn out, but I don't think the originals hasn't really burned out to me. The Vampire Diaries didn't really burn out to me. The ending of the seasons they've really shown that they've been around for a while and they've told a lot of stories. I don't think they really burned out, but I think they dwindled in where they wanted to go. I don't know if that series will share this. I think the first season is going to be really good, though. I have no doubts. That's pretty much what you really got from this episode as a whole, is the whole Legacies thing. Everything else was stuff that we've already seen and already known. I think the nostalgia callbacks were the best part, and something that we needed to see on the originals since the last crossover with Stefan. And even in that crossover, it was mostly just Stefan being in the world of the originals. It wasn't really the originals showing what the Vampire Diaries world was back then. This episode, it really did show life after the Vampire Diaries characters took their final bow. The Archives of Stefan was awesome. Alaric pretty much has these journals or whatever of all the stories that they told in the Vampire Diaries, I guess. Apparently the whole school knows that Klaus was the biggest monster to ever live, and the Salvatore brothers fought the Michelson brothers countless times, and apparently they all have that as reading material, which, yeah, sure, let's place that with Hope in the school, so I'm sure she's going to be facing a lot of that over her head come time in the Legacies. What I found really good, though, was Hope, for a second, pretty much died, for a split second, and she went and seen Haley in this little afterlife that they had. Jackson was there, Nathan Parsons returned. It was pretty cool. I thought, he didn't get no lines, but, seeing him there was cool. I guess him and Haley are, I don't know if they're romantic in the afterlife or not. Does she tell him that she went back to Elijah? Does she tell him she still likes Elijah, or loves Elijah? What do you do? But when Hope comes back, Joseph Morgan shows more emotion and is screaming for Hope than I think anybody's shown almost all season regarding everybody. Hope tells Elijah on this little park bench that Haley is still holding out a dance for him, and she actually does think it's some kind of white light hallucination, partially, or doesn't know if it was the real thing. But Elijah obviously confirms it was real, because the only one who ever said that to him was Haley, and he never told nobody about that. We seen it in the last episode, and it was a little good thing that Daniel Gillies portrayed, so great. And it shows that 5 years into the show, more than 5 years, what is it now, almost 8 years with these characters, they can just pull so much stuff into some of their little subtle nuances, and it is so great. It is so refreshing to see them give these character-driven moments this season to Elijah and Klaus. I wish there was more of it, but we only got 13 episodes. Pushing past that, though, there's these it's hard to tell. It's hard to say all this stuff because it was so. The pacing was a little weird. but it wasn't bad. You know, I don't think the pacing is ever bad. It was kind of jumping from these big plot points in the originals season to backdoor pilot stuff or legacies. And if anyone remembers, that's kind of the opposite of what happened in the Vampire Diaries. We didn't really switch to any Vampire Diaries plot in the backdoor pilot for the originals. It was mostly just the originals plot, period. And that was kind of the drawback to intertwining so much of Hope into this season of the originals and then having her spinoff come right after. But we got these scenes between Klaus and Caroline where we finally showed we got this little mini callback to the big 100th episode of the Vampire Diaries where Caroline and Klaus made the vow for Klaus to never come back to Mystic Falls, and then you all know what happens after that. You have the scene where Klaus and Caroline are kind of arguing about what to do with Hope and the girls, and Klaus mentions he's going to be the one to sacrifice himself for Hope, to which Caroline finally kind of sees the changes that he's gone through and sees that he is a different person than he was 15 years or whatever it was ago that he left Mystic Falls in the wake of Silas and all the ghosts and stuff. And she finally sees that he is a completely different person. Whether fans or people don't see that, he's obviously a different character now. He wasn't just willing to. At the beginning of the episode, they thought they were going to put the hollow in Klaus and he was going to get buried, which was another callback. How many times Caroline and her friends tried to bury him in the ocean. He was going to be willingly buried in the ocean. And just a little further in the episode, he switches that position to where he has somehow, God knows, has a white oak stake, and tells her that they're going to just have to kill him, period. Which, I have no idea where he got that white oak stake. I mean, it was a giant plot point a couple years ago to where they were destroying every last bit of the white oak. And the fact that he has a whole stake on him was a little out of nowhere, a little jarring. I don't know what the point was of that, but I guess, they have to die somehow, and the white oak stake is really the only thing that can kill them. So they had to pull that out of their ass. But I don't know where that white oak stake is from. I don't know if it's from Season 3 of the originals when they were getting rid of all of it, or if it's from Season 3 of the Vampire Diaries when they had those 12 stakes or whatever. But I thought they burned all those. I thought they burned all these. I mean, maybe it's from 500,000 years ago that Klaus just always kept. Which, in the grand scheme of things, makes no sense. I'm pretty sure someone did a tracking spell for all the white oak somewhere on one of these shows. But, moving on from the kind of inconsistency that was, the rest of the episode was, really good. I loved Klaus and Caroline's talk and her reference to Stefan sacrificing himself, 9 years ago or whatever it was in their time. And I just don't like how the show hasn't given. Stefan was the only one to cross over to the originals in Season 3, for a full-fledged episode and being allied with them. Tyler was practically like a villain of the week on the show. But Stefan, has a bond with Klaus. They're kind of like a brother thing they had in the 20s. And, the last time they met each other, they were on good terms, pretty much. And I just feel like, we didn't get a scene where. We've had a couple mentions of Stefan this season, but there's been no mentions that he's even. This was the first mention that he was dead, and it's just there's been no talk of how Klaus feels or how even Rebecca feels about Stefan's death. I mean, she loved him. Klaus pretty much loved him as like a brother. I just don't get the whole we're not going to talk about the big final death of TVD on the originals thing, but we'll talk all about Klaus and Caroline's past. But, getting that out of the way, it was a great little scene. I dig the scene with them at the town square where Klaus lets Hope go, or, Hope goes and dances with Landon at this little old school music show in the town square. And, Elijah tells her to behave, and Klaus, lets her dance with a quote-unquote townie. And it's so fitting because he has that talk with Caroline about Tyler being a small town boy in season 3 of the Vampire Diaries, and now he has, the will to just let Hope dance with a townie in her final, what could be her final moments of living. And Klaus, just character development with him is, I think it's one of the only characters they really consistently did right within the Vampire Diaries originals universe. Elijah he's been pretty messed up. We're not even going to speak on what happened to Damon in the Vampire Diaries. Stefan was never treated probably the way he should be, but Klaus is just, they hit all the beats with him, they've hit the development points with him. He is really what he should be right now, and I think tonight did nothing but prove that. He showed so much development in the way he treats Hope, and I think that going forward, this show will go down as like the angel of our generation, and it will show Klaus as this, the way a redeemed, not hero, but not even an anti-hero, but an anti-villain sort of hero-ish to the people he cares about person. And I think they really cemented that tonight. It's really blindsided because you have it in the backdoor pilot of the Legacies spinoff, but it's really shown there in the big moments with Klaus. And I think the end of the series will cement where this show lands in TV history. I really hope that it doesn't fall flat next week. They have a lot of stuff to wrap up. A lot of stuff to wrap up, especially with the final scenes of the show. I enjoyed Klaus and Elijah fighting in the Salvatore Brothers doorway. That was so good. It was shot so good, being like directly in the doorway. Just gave you all the TVD feels. And then they get the hollow out of Klaus. They give Hope this like siphon tonic thing, so the daughters, Lizzie and Josie, don't have to touch Hope when she's transforming into a wolf. And Klaus lets her run free into the wild, like Haley wanted, even though I hate that stupid plot thing. They're werewolves, probably eating people, but whatever. And then the Klaus has the hollow, and he's like about to stake himself, and Elijah's trying to stop him, and he, it looks like he's about to do it, and then boom, end credit, end title screen. And I think the ending was kind of stupid because we all seen photos and the promo for next week, and Klaus isn't dead, so. But it was a good episode. Really jumpstarts the blood, gets the blood flowing. Ugh, I can't talk tonight. Gets the blood flowing for next week. The series finale is next week. It is going to be big. It is going to be epic. I have the same faith in it as I did for the Vampire Diaries series finale, and they delivered. I think this will deliver, maybe even more. They have a lot of stuff to wrap up. So did TVD, and they did it, and this should do it. And this should do it for this episode. It was a great episode. It has me cashed in for Legacies in the fall. I hope the originals closes out with a great episode next week, and I'll be back with a video next week to talk about either how this show all came crashing down, or how it cemented its place in TV history. And I don't know, I might live stream for the series finale next week and watch it, on here on YouTube with everybody, if anybody freaking tunes in. But we'll see. This is TA Media. I'm out. The Originals, Season 5, Episode 12, A Tale of Two Wolves.